Good evening, everybody, and welcome. On behalf of the Young Israel of Kew Garden Hills, I'd like to welcome you to our program this evening, which is part of the Rabbi Fabian Schoenfeld Adult Education Center. I'd like to acknowledge all the distinguished rabbis and leaders in the Jewish community. We thank you for being able to be available this evening. Rabbi Fabian Schoenfeld Center was established in 2020 in memory of the founding Rav, Rabbi Fabian Schoenfeld, who needs no introduction. Rabbi Fabian Schoenfeld's yahrzeit will be observed on the third day of Hanukkah, and it'll be the fourth yahrzeit this year. Tonight, we are honored to have as our guest speaker Moshe Hill, political analyst and weekly columnist for the Queens Jewish Link, a newspaper that you find at your door every Friday morning. Moshe will speak on the following topic: the Jewish voting bloc, participation in politics, and the future of U.S.-Israel relationship. I'd like to acknowledge the members of the family, of the Hill family, who were so dedicated to the Hashkama Minyan at the Young Hills. I remember clearly Moshe, your father, speaking several years ago at the summer lecture series about his experiences serving as a chaplain. I'd like to finally thank Rebecca Witter for all the hard work in coordinating the many programs for the Rabbi Fabian Schoenfeld Adult Education Center. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Schoenfeld family, and in particular, Rabbi Yoel Schoenfeld. Without any further ado, I'd like to Moshe Hill. Following the presentation, there'll be some questions from the audience. Moshe Hill.
Thank you very much, and thanks so much for having me. It's really great being here. I have deep roots in the Young Israel Kew Garden Hills community. As you said, my father spoke a few years ago about, I think, at the Hashkama Minyan. I remember being taken to that Hashkama Minyan as a little boy when we went to visit my Zaidi when he was there, Zaidi Rabbi David Hill. And I loved going to that shul and falling asleep because I was 7 years old going to Hashkama Minyan on Shabbos. But like you said, my name is Moshe Hill, and I'm a columnist for the Queens Jewish Link. I've contributed to numerous online print publications like Newsweek, Daily Wire, Washington Examiner, CNS News, Jewish Home, a few others. And my columns can be found on my website, hillwithaview.com, and my Twitter account is hillwithview if anyone wants to take a look. So tonight, as you said, I'm going to be speaking about the Jewish voting bloc and the power of the Jewish community has to shape in our representation in every level of government. First, I would like to define what the Jewish community is in terms of voting, because it would be foolish of me and somewhat intellectually dishonest to claim that everyone should vote the same just because they're Jewish. To be Jewish in this day and age is as much of a status symbol as is an adherence to a religion or a national identity. We've all seen so-called Jewish groups that are out on the streets protesting on behalf of Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists. I say so-called because a lot of these groups have non-Jews masquerading as Jews for clout. But these groups have been around for a long time, some since the 90s. Jewish Voice for Peace was founded in the late 90s by Noam Chomsky and became militant on college campuses. Their tactics didn't sway enough people for someone like Jeremy Ben-Ami, so he started J Street in 2008, which took a more academic approach and immediately set to work on college campuses. So alumni of J Street who found their tactics too passive, but were not ready for the militancy of Jewish Voice for Peace, founded If Not Now, who began by reciting Kaddish for terrorists killed by Israel. And they too went to work on college campuses. So why do all these places go to college campuses? Because they know that the center of Jewish life, namely shuls like this one, are not present there. Yes, there's a Hillel house on every college campus, but they can't compete with the left-wing indoctrination that kids are receiving from their college professors and campus life. So college campus is a place where young unaffiliated Jews are gathering and having their first real connection with Jewish identity outside their immediate family. So these groups are creating pockets of Jewish communities with an ideology of extreme left-wing philosophy, which is anti-Zionist to its core. So that's not obviously not the kind of community that most of us are familiar with. Religious Jewish communities are typically small in size, but also smaller in physical geographical area. This makes sense as people need to be in walking distance of a shul. So this can be seen as a disadvantage in terms of being insular in nature, but it's actually a great advantage in terms of voting and political participation. So as opposed to secular Jews who spread out over large areas based on economic and social factors without considering needing to be within walking distance of a shul or a kosher supermarket or restaurants, or the secularist left-wing Jews who go to urban areas and in the city, the village, Upper West Side, all those areas where they're integrated immediately into that liberal population. Religious Jewish population density can shape the district that they are in. We see this in terms of representation in Albany, where Doev Heiken served for many, many years. Now we have so many religious Jewish representatives, I think that there could be a minion up in Albany. There's Sam Berger from Munich Community, David Weprin, who's from Queens, Ari Brown is from the Five Towns, Simcha Eichenstein is from Brooklyn, many others. So you notice how I'm listing both Democrats and Republicans, because I'm not here to advocate specifically for a partisan side, despite being partisan myself. And if you read my columns at the Queens Jewish Link, you know how partisan I am. I am strictly very Republican, very conservative, politically, Orthodox religiously. But I'm just simply talking about the power the Jewish community has when we participate in this process. Thankfully, there was massive participation in the 2024 election. The numbers coming out of the Jewish community were astounding. I'm from West Hempstead, and my Young Israel turned out 93% of membership to come out and vote. And I was so happy about that, I actually sponsored a kiddush as a hakarat tov to my community. And people were very concerned. How did you know this information? How do you know that there's 93%? People were coming up to me as like, I don't like the fact that you know this. And I'm like, and I said to replied, this is public information that politicians have access to, and they want to know who turns out. So it's very important that we turn out to vote, because people see this and then they're more responsive later on. And it wasn't just my shul in Long Island. Orthodox shuls across and schools in Lawrence, Cedarhurst, Hewlett, South Shore, Atlantic Beach, Long Beach, all posted numbers in the 90+% turnout range. In fact, in Nassau County, Jewish voters in general turned out 75%. That includes non-Orthodox voters, where the entire district turned out 67%. Compare that to other key demographics. Hispanic voters at 59% and Black voters turnout was 56%. This was able to be accomplished in Nassau County with the help of organizations like Long Island Unites, which is dedicated to turning out the Jewish vote. They registered hundreds of voters in a short amount of time and created an app that anyone can use to reach out to people they know in their neighborhood to go and vote. So I'm bringing this up because even though this is a predominantly Queens community, these are the kind of tools that we can be used in Queens. And I noticed the similar numbers coming out of Queens. In Queens, massive, massive voting numbers, especially in the Jewish community, big numbers, and all in basically the same direction. But they didn't all vote at the top of the ticket one way and kept it going the rest of the way. There was a lot of split votes, split ballots, but even when they split ballots, they were all going in unison, which is a great thing to see, because that means that when a community unites, that means that there's a lot of political power there in that area. And so the Long Island Unites is actually an off branch of the organization called Westchester Unites, which was the group that was instrumental in getting Jamal Bowman out of office. Jamal Bowman was one of the most ardent anti-Israel voices in Congress, and he lost his primary to a far more moderate Democrat, George Latimer, because of the organizational efforts of the Jewish community and Bowman's inability to go out of an exit without hitting a fire alarm. Of course, the rest of the squad blamed AIPAC for trying to buy the election, but ad campaigns and money can only do so much. Yes, they are very effective and they definitely are necessary. I'm going to talk about that more later, but they only can do so much in terms of winning. We all saw the results of this election. Kamala Harris outspent Donald Trump 5-1 by some estimations, yet Trump won. Why is that? Because of on-the-ground organization and get out the vote efforts. Scott Pressler was in Pennsylvania, Charlie Kirk and TPUSA was in North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. Turnout is really the name of the game. So this is the same thing happened with Jewish organization in another Democratic primary with Cori Bush in Missouri. Cori Bush started her campaign, her representation, her as a Black Lives Matter organizer, and the same Black Lives Matter that put out pro-Hamas messages and imagery after October 7th. Wesley Bell challenged Bush 3 weeks after October 7th of 2023, and the St. Louis Jewish community quickly mobilized around him. Stacey Newman, who served as a Democratic state representative in Missouri for 9 years, immediately joined Bell's campaign as his Jewish Vote Coalition director. She worked closely with Rabbi Jeffrey Abraham of Congregation B'nai Amunah and Lisa Barron, a retired attorney and nonprofit director who belongs to the Young Israel over there, and to construct a campaign strategy that would fully engage the entire local Jewish community. And the reason I'm saying these names as opposed to just saying this person here, this person there, is because these people deserve credit for what they were able to do. And I think that credit should be given to anyone who's able to mobilize their community and get out the vote in this way. Cheryl Adelstein of St. Louis Votes, which is a nonpartisan 501c3 focused on empowering Jewish St. Louisans, it highlighted the impact of their efforts. She noted that according to the St. Louis County Turnout Dashboard, voter turnout in University City, Olivet, and a small part of Creve Coeur, I definitely mispronounced that, is each with a relatively large Jewish population, ranged from 40 to 50%, and the average turnout for a primary is around 20%. So they're doubling, and in some cases maybe tripling, the average turnout. This is all to come out and vote against somebody who is actively against Jewish interests. In Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick just beat incumbent Bob Casey. This is no small part because of the Jewish community. Remember, Pennsylvania is the home of Governor Josh Shapiro, who's a conservative Jew who's very pro-Israel, who has a mezuzah on his door, who he keeps kosher, and John Fetterman, one of the most pro-Israel voices in the Democratic Party, aside from Richie Torres. So Bob Casey could have followed in their footsteps, but he didn't. He left McCormick a wide open lane in the pro-Israel Jewish community. So as detailed by Jeff Bartos in the New York Post, who joined the McCormick campaign quickly after, Dave McCormick earned the Jewish vote in Pennsylvania by taking strong moral stance against anti-Semitism and providing unwavering support for Israel. He responded decisively to anti-Semitic incidents, such as supporting an Israeli-American restaurant targeted by pro-Hamas protesters and calling for the resignation of the University of Pennsylvania president after her failure to condemn genocide rhetoric. And that was by Elise Stefanik. That was during that congressional hearing that Elise Stefanik got them to basically say that calling for genocide of Jews wasn't against campus policy. And now Elise Stefanik is the ambassador to the UN, or going to be. So McCormick's actions, including a visit to Israel shortly after October 7th, contrasted sharply with Casey's ambivalence in some ways and hostilities in others, like the endorsement of Summer Lee, who's a card-carrying squad member and is incredibly anti-Israel. So consider this. Exit polling shows that the Jewish vote moved around 11 points to the right this election cycle. There are 300,000 Jewish voters in Pennsylvania. 11% of that is 33,000. The difference between McCormick and Casey was around 15,000 votes. So these votes absolutely matter. This could be the difference maker in statewide Senate elections. Now, these are just a few of the prominent examples of Jewish mobilization and turnout this year, which shaped national politics. I could literally give dozens of examples of state, local, and federal level. But this was a presidential election year, which normally has high turnout. This must be replicated every single election. Elections occur every year, multiple times a year. Local elections affect our day-to-day lives even more than national ones. Elections are not going away no matter what anyone says. That people love to say this is the last election in our lifetimes. We're going to have plenty of elections. I promise you that. Here's a prime example. Next week, on December 10th, Great Neck is having an election for one of 3 parks commissioners. So there's a 3-seat commission for the parks in Great Neck. One of the seats is up. Vanessa Tamari is currently an incumbent. She's being challenged. So why should that matter? Because Vanessa allows permits and advocates for permits in Great Neck for pro-Israel and Jewish events, or outdoor Jewish concerts, other events requiring park permits, October 7th commemoration events. She's an advocate for these events. Her challenger is not, and actually is against these events. Now, I spoke to somebody who's deeply engrossed in the Great Neck community, and they said that it could be a real problem for the Great Neck Jewish community to actually have events in the parks to get permits for these events if the election goes the wrong way. This is next week. So we had an election a month ago. So next week, there's going to be a very low turnout election. So this person could win if the Jewish community doesn't mobilize on their own behalf. In May of every year, everywhere but in New York City, so this doesn't really affect the Queens community, but there are school board and library elections. School boards control 70 to 80% of property tax bills and are representatives of the community. I know in West Hempstead, we've been fighting for years to change that, and turnout is still incredibly low in each election, around 10 to 15%. And when you see on the news that that there are events at schools and at libraries that one may find somewhat objectionable, well, that's because of voter turnout. Nobody comes out and votes, and so people just get in these seats. The people who want to get in these seats have agendas, and they use their agenda to push their political priorities. And sometimes that's not what the community wants, but the community doesn't come out to vote. So this can be extended out to off-year government elections. So I mentioned an election in December. There's an election in May, but there's also elections every November. New York City Council is every 2 years on off-year elections, and you have one coming up. There's another New York City Council rate this next November. New York City Mayor is every 4 years, and they'll be coming up this year. Now, if you think, okay, well, we've had issues, Bill de Blasio, he was bad, but he wasn't terrible, or, maybe you liked him, maybe you didn't. Zoran Mamdani is a New York State Assembly member and a Democratic socialist who's currently running for mayor in the primary against Eric Adams. He's the guy who introduced the Not on Our Dime Act in the Assembly, which would give the Attorney General of the state the power to shut down any nonprofit that donates to Israel. So that includes pretty much every shul in New York. This is the guy who is running right now for New York City mayor in a primary against Eric Adams, who's dealing with a lot of scandals. So there's a very good shot that this guy could be the Democrat candidate. And if he's the Democrat on the ticket, he's most likely going to win. So Mamdani was also arrested during an anti-Israel protest on October 13th, 2023, less than a week after October 7th. He was already out there protesting Israel, calling it a genocide, doing all the same shtick they're doing over a year later. Now, he was endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America and could easily win that primary. And if he wins that primary, he's easily your next mayor. Now, I love Curtis Sliwa. I think he's running again. I wish he was going to have a shot to win. I do not think he's going to have a shot to win. But Mamdani will make Bill de Blasio look like Rudy Giuliani. It's a real problem. Now, compare that nightmare scenario to what we have here in Nassau County. Now, I keep touting my county because I live here, so I know it very well. So I'm not trying to sell my county to my friends in Queens to tell you guys to move out here. My parents are watching this right now, and they just left Nassau County for the greener pastures of Florida. So what are you going to do? But we do have a county legislator presided by a religious Jew, Howard Coppell, and our county executive is a conservative Jew, Bruce Blakeman. In Nassau County, we didn't have the pro-Palestinian protests that they have in Teaneck, New Jersey, for example, which is a big problem over there. When Hamas supporters last year were going to the malls during holiday shopping in last December, they went to harass shoppers, and Nassau County Police Department shut them down before they entered Roosevelt Field Mall. When protesters wore masks to avoid accountability when attacking Jews, our legislator passed a ban on masking during these protests. Elections have consequences, and we need to make sure that those consequences are in our favor. So that's the power of the Jewish voting bloc. But it's not enough just to turn out to vote. That's literally just the beginning. And I hate to say it, but participation in politics means walking your neighborhood, raising money, knowing and speaking with your elected representatives, inviting them to speak at your shul, which is something that a lot of shuls are very reluctant to do for fear of losing their nonprofit benefits. So participating in politics is really not for the faint of heart. Politicians want either your money or your time. If you have money, you can get to a lot of places of power very easily. I can get you a ticket to any event you could possibly want to go to, including the inauguration, including anything you want, meet with any politician at any level you would like, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's a great way to skip to the head of the organization and get really in a lot of places of power. And I don't begrudge this at all. To be perfectly honest, campaigns need money, and they are not getting any cheaper. Over $5 billion was spent in 2024 to get people elected, and that's just for the federal office. It doesn't even include all the state and local races. But if you're like me and you don't have thousands of dollars to throw around at candidates of choice, there are other ways to get involved. I mentioned before Long Island Unites. they didn't just register voters, they organized captains in communities. I took the responsibility of getting someone from each shul in West Hempstead to be the captain of that shul. And I'm not going to lie, I was not especially successful. Even in high stakes elections like this one, people do not want to be involved. Getting people to vote is one thing, but getting people to push their neighbors to vote is something else. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth. And I have 3 young kids, so I know what that's like now. They scream a lot. Now, they had a great tool for this election, and I'm going to push them to expand it to other elections as well. It allows a captain to make a list of their contacts, which lets them know which one of their contacts voted. Once again, this is public information. So that way, when I nudge people or outright pester them, I know who to call and who to avoid. With weeks of early voting, by the time election day comes, most of my list is pretty much done. I'm happy to say that of my 1,000 or so names, over 90% of my list voted, but it was not easy. It takes a lot of work. Campaigns and candidates are always looking for volunteers and for help. Phone banking, walking around neighborhoods, putting out lawn signs, fundraising. These are all things that anyone can do for a couple hours a week and will be of enormous help to their communities. I had one woman in my community who was begging for years to the candidate. Like, he came around to the community. She says, I want to volunteer, I want to help you. And he said, yes, contact my organization. And she contacted the organization. And sometimes the campaign itself is a little scattered, which is unfortunate. So she contacted me. I said, she's like, what can I do? And so I literally gave her a list of 200 names. And I said, here, can you call these people and just tell them to go out and vote? And it took her 2 nights, and she did it for a couple hours each night. And literally nearly everybody who she called went out to vote. It's actually incredible. Now, this is what participating in politics looks like. It's not arguing on social media or at the kiddush with your friends about Trump. I've spent a lot of my time doing that. It goes nowhere. It never has, it never will. But turning around a local election from someone who will harm your community to someone who will help it, that's really worthwhile. So I urge everyone here to get more involved. Don't just ask for things from your representatives you like, but work to keep them elected. Don't just complain about representatives who do not share your policies and values, but work to replace them. We have a lot of elections. They happen literally all the time. We also have a lot of power to shape certain elections. We need to utilize that power when we can. Otherwise, others with competing interests will. Now, I want to say a couple things about the future of the U.S.-Israel relationship. So here's some good news. The U.S. military is deeply invested in the security of Israel. Israel is a testing ground for new technology and buys a lot of weapons from U.S. manufacturers. So even if things didn't go the way they did last month, that relationship on that end would be in decent shape. Now, here's the great news. President Trump has selected the most Zionist cabinet I've ever seen. Each pick he has made is better than the last in terms in terms of not only support for Israel's right to defend itself, but support for Israel to claim sovereignty over Judea and Samaria and restore a biblical connection to the land itself. It's actually incredible. I had the opportunity to speak to David Friedman last week at an event I wrote about in the Queen's Jewish Link, where I asked him about Mike Huckabee, and he said that he is the best possible person to be the UN ambassador. So coming from David Friedman, that is quite the endorsement. And he really loved it. Now you have Marco Rubio, whose highest Senate priority in 2019 was a pro-Israel anti-BDS bill. That was his number 1 priority. You have Elise Stefanik, who literally tore apart college administrators for not being pro-Jewish enough. And her job as the UN ambassador is literally to yell at anti-Semites. So I think she'll be great at that. Pete Hegseth is an incredible pro-Israel pick. I'm not concerned, but I'm very annoyed about what's going on with him right now, where not at him, but at all the people attacking him. I think that they're trying to basically get him. They're trying to use the media to get him out. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he'll be confirmed. I'm very excited about this. Each pick is better than the last. So it's not time to be playing deep on Israel. We don't need to demand the right to exist. We don't need to demand the right to survive. This is the time to push the American government to radically change how it views Israel's sovereignty. So what does this mean? This means affirming the Pompeo Doctrine, which states that Israeli settlements in Judea and Samaria are not illegal according to international law. That was put in by Mike Pompeo, and that was reversed by Antony Blinken this past February, after October 7th, Antony Blinken basically reversed that. So we got to reaffirm that, go further than that, and support Israel's plan to annex the settlements. And I put quotes around settlements because I'm sure everyone here has, and if you haven't, you should go, been to places like Efrat, Ma'ale Adumim, Kiryat Arba. These are cities, okay? They're not settlements. This also means enforcing the Taylor Force Act, which means defunding the Palestinian Authority when they engage in pay-for-slay operations. This means defunding UNRWA and putting pressure on other nations to do the same. It means defunding the United Nations if they continue to target Israel. This means passing anti-BDS legislation. It means protecting Jewish students on college campuses by using Title VI of the Civil Rights Act to attack university endowments if they refuse to stop the harassment of those students. This means 100 other things as well. And with this incoming administration, we need to think outside the box. We need to think big. We need to push the envelope because we don't know what's going to happen when the pendulum of U.S. politics swings the other way. And it will eventually swing the other way. It'll be in 2 years. It'll be in 4 years. It'll happen sooner than we'd like to think. So we have to push it now. This is our best opportunity to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship and make Israel even more secure and have more sovereignty than it ever has. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to take some questions. So, Stewie, I don't know how you want to do this. People, if there's a little button on the bottom where you can raise a hand or something, or if somebody just wants to unmute and start chatting, or if nobody has questions, I can just keep talking for another 20 minutes.
Anyone have any questions?
Yes. Hello?
Yes,
yeah, I hear you.
Waiting for the question.
No, okay.
Yaakov, speak.
Yeah, thank Moshe Hill for definitely being a very, very tremendous asset to the Queens Jewish Link. And we've been to numerous events together, and we've met people that are very, very, very connected. And I think our Queens community has had a tremendous effect on the elected officials, and we've become, like Moshe said, we've become close with David Friedman, and we other people like that. And I think that what Moshe Hill is doing is a tremendous thing, and I think we should all support him. And it's just so important that everybody get involved. And I think we're trying to do that with a newspaper, and Moshe's trying to do it politically. And I think every individual here really cares about the Jewish people and cares about Israel. And it's so important that we all get involved. And thank you.
Is there a question, Yaakov?
I just wanted to give his parents a little nachas. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Any questions from the audience?
I do. I have a question. This is Arthur.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi. I live in I live in northern Queens, and I have the pleasure of having AOC as my congressman. And she wins the primary by getting 3/4 of the votes, but she only wins by 1,000 votes, or maybe 2,000 votes. And it's not only the Jewish. All right, my button keeps going out. It's not only the Jewish community, it's everybody that's against that. We have the problem. The Republicans have an expression as rhino, that you're a Republican in name only. We need dinos who will register Democratic and then vote for the best Democratic candidate that they have. So we get rid of some of the bad ones. And our city councilman, he's pretty terrible. We have somebody who wants to run against them, who's very good. All right, they're both Democrats, but let's have a good Democrat in that. Uh, so we got to get not only the people to come out to vote, but people to register properly so that they can vote. That in Queens, anything other than Democrats can't vote in the primary. Therefore, the primary always goes to the extreme.
Arthur, is there a question?
Yeah, all right. How can we do that? How can we how can we turn, and create this dino, I don't know if there's such an expression, but this dino category for people to come out and vote in the primaries.
Moshe? Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Excellent question, and that's actually what happened with the George Latimer Jamal Bowman race, and that's what happened with the Cori Bush Wesley race in Wesley Bell race in Missouri. So those are the examples I brought up. When it comes to AOC specifically, I hate to break it to you, she's not going anywhere. She is. You are stuck with her, literally forever. The only way she gets out of Congress at this point is if she literally runs for president or the Senate, which doesn't seem like she's going to run for the Senate, because if she was going to do that, she probably would have done it either this year or 2 years ago. But now the next Senate seat in New York is up in 4 years. I don't know if she wants to wait that long. And in 4 years, she may literally be running for president. So she's not going anywhere in terms of Congress in 2 years. And there's not enough, the population in that district, because they rechanged the lines. There was a slight chance he could have done it in 2020. She got in 2018. And I actually wrote an article for the Daily Wire in 2019, how she's not going anywhere ever. She's going to be on the public dole. You're going to hear her name. I'm going to hear her name for the rest of my life. You're going to hear her name for the rest of your life. She's going to be around forever. And that's just the way it is, because of the way it's structured over there. It's unfortunate. She is a horrific human being and a terrible member of Congress. Members of Congress actually come out at this point to two types of people: the people who want to actually legislate and do the job of Congress that they were sent there to do, and the people who want to be celebrities but couldn't make it in Hollywood. She is part of that crowd. She couldn't make it. She can't make it as an actress. She was brought in by a group called the Justice Democrats, which was formed from Bernie Sanders staffers after his failed 2016 election. They formed a group. They literally started interviewing candidates, people who could be photogenic and activist and are really good at social media. And they got them, squeezed them in the primaries, and now they're there forever. It's actually because of redistricting that Bowman got out in this year. So unfortunately, you can't do anything about AOC. The principle still remains, though, which is because AOC, that's a big district. That district is just the way it's shaped. It's a lot of it's in the Bronx, a lot of it's in North Queens. It's just too difficult to do there. The city council race of yours, I'd have to look at the numbers. There is a little bit more you can do there because those districts are a lot smaller. Look at in the Whitestone area, Vicky Palladino came in. She is incredibly right wing. I mean, she is a very good, very strong representative in the New York City Council. And she came in an area, she literally built up a community around her in Whitestone over the course of years. It actually took her a long time. So you may need somebody, a charismatic character like that, who's going to build up the communities. You want to talk about somebody who built something from nothing. She literally created the Whitestone Republican Club and has monthly meetings with hundreds of people. I mean, I've been to many of those meetings. I've spoken at those meetings. She is a very beloved in her community. You're going to probably need somebody like that to make a real change in the New York City Council. But based on what we've seen this year, if the Jewish community turns out to vote for moderate people in Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, all the Jewish communities, the New York City Council is a 51-seat council with, I think, 6 Republicans. It could have maybe 10. I'm not talking about majority here, let's not go nuts, but like now you start getting 10, you start, maybe in a few years you lose the supermajority. These things can happen, and they're generational. It's a generational task.
Yeah, all right. So talk about city council. Shakar is our city councilman. And I don't know if you know the city councilman, but he's pretty bad. He's Ricardo, I forget it, Pachaco or something like that, is running against him as a Democrat.
Okay.
Ricardo is a very good guy. I know him. I meet him in the street. He gives me a great big hello. I always wear a yarmulke, and uh, uh, he's concerned against about the anti-Jewish bias here, and he wants us to do things. All right, there are. Uh, he's Democratic. He's very pro-gay. Well, but so what? That doesn't affect me as a Jew. Uh, you know, and so we can't get out AOC. And by the way, AOC won 2-1 in the election, but last time
Yeah.
she won about 3.5 to 1.
So it's actually fascinating because I think, if I remember correctly, her congressional district shifted more to the right than any congressional district in the country.
correct.
But when you start at 40 points and then you end at 25 points, you still got, which is a big shift. You still got 25 points to go before you actually, get someone out of office. So it's still,
this is why her opponents in the her opponents can't vote against her in the primary. It's the primary that counts.
yes.
In my district, the Democrat on the election wins, but in the primary, they're all Democrats.
Yes.
And
So
I'm a registered Democrat. I don't necessarily vote that way, but I guess I hardly ever vote that way.
Okay.
But I'm registered as a Democrat. And
Okay, thank you, Arthur. Rabbi Schoenfeld has a question.
all right, good, Rabbi.
thank you.
Unmute, please.
Can't hear you. Rabbi, can't hear you.
Unmute yourself, Rabbi.
Can't hear you. Right here.
Do you hear me now?
There you go.
It was refusing to unmute. I don't know what that was. But anyway, first of all, Moshe, thank you, and you have a great view from that hill. And I also, it's great to see your parents on board. And I thank Rabbi Stewie Verständig and his committee for making this and honoring the memory of my father. As Stewie pointed out, the yard set is coming up the third day of Hanukkah. Moshe, I wanted to know if you agree with something I've been writing about, and I feel very strongly about it, and that is that if we have a choice between a good Democrat who's done a lot for us and a good Republican who we have every reason to believe should also be okay, should we not be behind the Republican despite the Democrats' good record? And the reason I say is because when you vote for a candidate, Republican, Democrat, you're not just voting for them, you're voting to empower their party. So you can have wonderful Democrats that serve us, but if the Democrats take over the majority of either the Senate, I'm talking about either the Assembly in New York or the House in Washington, the agenda is entirely different because you by the 2 or 3 people that we put in for our own interest tip the scales. So I've been writing about this. I wonder if you feel the same, that the organized Jewish community should try to get behind as many Republicans as we can, even if the Democrats have served us well, or maybe get them to switch parties. Would you agree with go along with that notion, or do you have feelings other ways?
So I actually, as you're talking, I've just mentally wrote a new column. I'm gonna title it for now, "The Torah's Conundrum." Okay, the Torah's Conundrum, the Richie Torah's Conundrum, who is an amazing guy, incredible on Israel stuff, and very left wing on literally every other issue. And so Richie Torres is very likely going to run for governor in 2 years. He's going to run against Kathy Hochul. Let's say he wins. And let's say the Republican who is running for governor is someone like Mike Lawler or Lolita, not Latimer. Let's say Mike Lawler, okay? Mike Lawler is just as good on Israel as Richie Torres is. However, Richie Torres is a Democrat. So when he's good on Israel, he gets a lot of headlines about it because he's going against the grain. Whereas Mike Lawler, when he's great on Israel, he put forward a lot of legislations this year. I wrote about it when I was writing my Anthony D'Esposito column, which I'm very unfortunate because Anthony D'Esposito, an amazing advocate for Israel, an amazing advocate for the Jewish community in my district in New York, he lost this past election, and I'm very upset about it. I hear now he's advocating to be the head of the Drug Enforcement Agency, and I wish him the best of luck. But Richie Torres, if he's up against Mike Lawler for governor of New York, or let's even say U.S. Senate, whatever it is, I'm going to go for Lawler because on that one issue of Israel, it's a push. They are equally as good. There's 50 other issues I'm concerned about. And even if Israel is my number one priority, which it is, it's not like Torres being as pro-Israel a Democrat is going to supersede the Republican who is equally as pro-Israel. We saw this very similar with the Tom Suozzi, Mazi Pilip special election this past February. Now, he is a pro-Israel guy. He was actually trying to compete with Mazi on being pro-Israel. Mazi was a former IDF soldier in the paratrooper brigade. You're not going to out Israel Mazi Pilip ever. But Tom Suozzi ended up winning that race because he was pro-Israel enough to get people to vote for him on all the other issues. So he made that into a push issue. He didn't make that into an issue, and this is in contrasting with the Dave McCormick-Bob Casey race, where McCormick was able to occupy a lane that Bob Casey that vacated. So politically, if the pro-Israel lane or that one issue lane is occupied by both candidates and they're equally good, then you have to look at all the other issues. And in that case, the Republican's going to win, at least in my book, 99 out of 100 times, because I'm very concerned about a lot of conservative governance. So I would tend to agree with you. Surprise, surprise. But I think that it's an argument that has to be made on a broad scale, because you're definitely going to get people who will say you have to vote for a Richie Torres because he's been so great and he's earned your vote because of this issue. And you need to basically say, Hakarat Tov, thank you very much, Richie Torres, but there's a lot of other issues that we have to be concerned about.
Very good. Okay.
I have another question, Moshe.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us watched that video that took place at the Chicago City Council. I don't know if you saw it. There was the community came out and
the woman who yelled at Brandon Johnson.
Exactly, at the mayor.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like enough is enough. You know, like the community, you're charging us your rate $300 billion or something, and their property taxes went up, and because they're supporting the illegal aliens, and many of them are criminals. And I mean, this was from the Black community that voted him in, and realizing that it's really bad. I'm just wondering. I mean, the New York City Council, the California and LA, San Francisco. I mean, maybe that could become a movement. But I mean, the same way like they're doing this in Chicago. Why not New York? Every blue state and city. You know.
Okay, so here's the issue over there, because while the residents are going to tear Brandon Johnson to pieces, they will never vote for a Republican. Lori Lightfoot was a horrible mayor of Chicago. She was terrible for years in every respect. And in her reelection, she lost in the primary to an even more left-wing, more outrageous guy, Brandon Johnson. And people are like, oh, maybe this will be the opportunity for Republicans to get in because Brandon Johnson's even crazier than Lori Lightfoot. Not even close. Brandon Johnson got in very easily because they're gonna vote Democrat. It doesn't matter what happens, who the candidate is. That's why I'm very concerned about this New York City mayor's race. Eric Adams, I mean, I have my qualms with him, and I think that he, at the beginning of his term, was trying to placate the left-wing voters by saying certain things. And I think that over the course of his term, he's actually learned the error of his ways in certain respects. He was very outspoken against illegal immigration once he saw what was happening to the city after the first year of his term, where he was very pro illegal immigration and was talking all the same left line. But the idea of us getting back to it's so bad that they replace Dinkins with Rudy Giuliani. I don't think this city is going to get there anytime soon. I really don't, unless how many decades of massive crime had to happen in New York City before we got to a Rudy Giuliani point. It's unfortunate, but it's really not going to happen. That's why I think the primary is actually incredibly important in New York City this year. So this actually happened a few years ago with the Melinda Katz versus Tiffany Caban race for Queens DA, which we covered in the Queens Jewish Link. You should all read and make sure to buy from the advertisers of the Queens Jewish Link so they continue advertising in the Queens Jewish Link. I'm just saying, and that race between Melinda Katz and Tiffany Caban was the Democratic primary race, and Melinda Katz won that by a couple dozen votes, and that was after urging a lot of people to re-register as Democrats to vote in that primary. Tiffany Caban, who's currently on the New York City Council, is a horror show. I mean, it's really terrible what she's been doing. So imagine if she was the Queen's DA. This is an issue that we're going to have upcoming. Look at Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg is a terrible Manhattan DA, and he's not going to have any competition on the Republican side. It's not possible. So we need to in Nassau County, I tell people to register as Republicans because it's important to show that it's not a strong Democratic stronghold, that it actually flips over, and then you have a different caliber of candidates in that way when you see that it's more of an even split. In Queens, it's so bad on one side, it's so slanted on one side that you may actually have to have everybody register as Democrats just to affect the primary, because that's the election you have to vote in.
It seems like Adams has been kissing up to Trump, to his, I guess, because of his,
It's a bold move. It's a bold move. It really is.
And not just that, he came out the other day that he wants Trump and Holman to come here and get rid of the criminal element from the illegal immigrants. I mean,
Adams has surprised me. Yeah.
Yeah.
He hasn't Fetterman surprised me, but he's surprised me. Fetterman shocked me. John Fetterman has blown me away, but Eric Adams has surprised me.
He just doesn't want to go to jail. So,
Could I say something?
Figures Trump will save him.
Are there any other questions?
Could I say something?
Yes.
Yeah. Standing Oboe. I'm going to say that locally in Queens, in our part of Queens, and you could see in Brooklyn, Republicans have, especially in Brooklyn, Republicans have won, and we've had some close races. So Republicans
Peanut
can
butter
win over
puff, yeah.
here. We had people that got 47%, 40, we had, if you go into, if you go into Far Rockaway, if it wasn't for the Jewish vote, we could have had a Republican win over there. So we have close, now when you talk about Western Queens, that's a whole nother ball game. Really, it's a whole nother ball game. The only way locally, like Arthur said, locally, maybe we could try to concentrate and try to get Pacheco, try to help them locally. Yeah, try to get someone like that. You're not going to get a Republican to win on that part of Queens. I mean, on a local thing. But in Brooklyn, we have 3 assembly persons. We have a state senate. We have a Republican. And we now have city councilwomen, and then we have 2 seats sharing with Staten Island. So, we have 2 city council people in Queens. There were some close races over here. The numbers were a lot closer. I mean, Kenny Peak got 47%. So it's a whole nother ball game. This part of Queens is that, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to change my party. I'm not going to change my party. You know what I mean? I'm going to stay as a Republican, and that I just feel that I have to help the Republican Party grow over here.
Okay,
I
thank you.
understand, and I appreciate that, and I respect that. I'm talking in terms of strategy. Like politics is a game in a lot of ways. It is a chess match in a lot of ways. In some ways, it's just a straight up boxing match. But in the chess match of party switches and moving things around, there is an advantage to having a large Democrat base to vote in the primaries to keep out the crazies from the general election, that they have a very good shot of winning.
This part of Queens is different than the rest of, this
Well,
part of Queens is
Moshe.
different.
Moshe,
And the whole thing is, this part of Queens is different.
all right, Daniel, thank you so much. Moshe, it's also difficult for a Republican to get any bill passed as a minority party in the state of New York.
Well, if we get more people in, it'll change. And I think it's going to happen.
So
it's going to happen.
So what's interesting is you have a guy like Simcha Eichelstein, and Simcha. Is it Simcha Eichelstein?
That's another thing. In Brooklyn, the Democrats in Brooklyn work with the Republicans. We have Yeager, going to be there now. We have Simcha Eisenstein. We have Simcha Felder, and we have Jamie Williams. And look what Jamie Williams does. She doesn't care about her party. In Mill Benson. She stuck up. She went after Floyd Benefield. Yeah, that's another part in Brooklyn. We are the only one. I think Sam realizes that. And the whole thing is, that's the problem with the politicians in Queens. All of them. Just about all of them. The difference is the Democrats in Brooklyn, we got people that stand up with the Republican Party and fight. So they're not happy about it. Other Democrats are not happy about it.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Moshe.
I understand. Thank you. So what I was going to say about Simcha Eichelstein is that if I'm not mistaken, he's third in command, third in rank at the New York State Assembly, which means that he's working within the state. He's playing that chess game where he is saying, I'll vote with you or push some agenda items that really don't affect me, but I'll hold back the stuff that really hurts from the DSA members like Zora Mandani. Like, there's a lot of them. I think there's 9 or maybe more DSA members of the Democratic Socialists of America in Albany right now, and they're gaining steam. They're gaining power in that party. So there has to be a lot of stuff that goes against them. Now, I am a Republican. I'm a conservative. I want more Republicans. I'm also a realist. And while the Republicans has had the Senate, the state Senate, up until 2018, it's now a supermajority in the state Senate, and they haven't held, I don't even know when the last time they held the assembly. Turning around the assembly in Albany is a near impossibility. I have drawn up plans and have shared those plans with people on how to flip the state Senate back to Republicans. And even if all my dreams came to fruition, you would still have a 1-seat majority at best. Then you have so it's a very, very long haul to getting Republicans as a majority in these state legislator houses. The same thing is true of the New York City Council. You gotta push where you can and win where you can. If you go for the Hail Mary, throw it down the field every single time, you're gonna fall every single time. You gotta move slowly. You gotta play the game. It's a lot of strategy. It's very difficult, and it's generational. It is not easy, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. So everyone has to get involved, and as much as you possibly can, come out to vote every single election. Get involved with your local candidates who work for you and who are good for you, so you can keep out the crazies. And that's really just my advice.
Okay, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank everyone who joined this evening, and a special thank you to Moshe Hill for a most informative presentation. Wishing everyone a good night.
Thank you very much.